Today's motion is this House believes that tearing down Edward Colston's statue in Bristol was correct. Speaking in proposition in favour of the motion, we're going to have James. And speaking in opposition to the motion, we're going to have Patrick. So without any further ado, I'd like to call James to propose the motion. Hear, hear.
Ladies and gentlemen, whenever you see a statue outside, what you immediately think is that that is someone of importance, someone that we should revere. They're on a plinth, literally, that we should all look forward. They don't promote any history about that person. They don't promote any understanding. People walk by statues every day, and what they do is they think, oh, that person's on a statue. We should revere him. He should be good. And especially when plinths attached to the statue say things like, he is one of the most revered and good boys of Bristol, as was a similar message was on Colston's statue. What this creates is it creates a mythology around this person. It doesn't allow us to actually understand the history. It doesn't allow us to understand what they actually did, allow us to learn from this. It creates a mythology where we just look at the statue and think, that was a good person. We don't actually delve into it very much. People see things and they think, that's fine, that's good, that's a great thing. And I ask you, what about the BAME Britons in this country who walk by that statue every day, a statue high up above the rest of us, towering over us, and they see it was a slave trader who enslaved one of their great-grandfathers and brought them here and brought them into slavery across seas. What message does that send to integration and multiculturalism? It sends a message that no, we don't want you here. No, we don't like you. No, go back to wherever you're from, or we'll enslave you again. We are revering these people by having them on these plinths. We're revering them and we're sending a message.
James,
go ahead.
Would not a more powerful way of solving this problem to have a great big plaque on Edward Colston's statue saying, this man was a terrible man, but at one point in our history, our society considered him to be a great man, and that is a shameful part of our history as a society?
Maybe in a museum where people are going and deliberately looking up history, but when people are locals to the area, when people have seen it every day of their lives, it just becomes a part of their history. They don't look at it and they don't think about it. It just becomes one of the many buildings in the background. You don't look and you don't read everything. It's on a street sign, for instance. You just know it because that's in your area. You know where you are instinctually based on your surroundings. You don't think about what is on there. And people don't think about it that way. They think of it as oh, he did a good thing. He deserves a statue. He's a good man. That's why we don't have statues of people like Hitler, like Stalin in this country. We have statues of people who did good things because we use them as an example. We put them in bronze, we put them above us and use them. Here is what we should be like. Thank you.
I'd like to thank James for that fine speech. And now call on Patrick to open a case for opposition.
Ladies and gentlemen, Edward Colston was a horrible man who believed in horrible things. Cecil Rhodes was a vile individual who committed vile deeds. What I say to you today is that our society, the society that at one point considered these men to be virtuous, to be noble, to be example society, our society has to remember that past and to remember the evil that we engage in as a society as a whole. And what I would say to you today is that by getting rid of these statues, you stop that process of admission by our society. What it results in is society just thinking less generally about, or the people that we're talking about anyway, thinking less about these issues, thinking less about what their society has been involved in past centuries. And therefore, I would say keeping these statues, along with public information campaigns, this contributing to the project of making the BAME community feel more enfranchised in our society. So that's my main point for you today. Why removing these statues just means less people think about these issues. Why is this true? Well, first, what we say is, what kind of people are we talking about here? We take a view of history from statues in cities or towns. We say these are probably the kinds of people who don't have the time or don't have the inclination to read the kind of history books that like talk about these people, to maybe go to museums and learn about these people anyway. They take their history, they take their opinions from passing glances, from like a studied look perhaps one day at these statues. Secondly, what we say is, for these people, what these statues act as, they act as a reflection of the time. They act as a reflection of what society in that period believed in. What the Edward Colston statue says to all of us is that at one point in our society, Great Britain, as we know it, thought that Edward Colston was a man that should be revered, thought the vile things he did in selling people was a thing that should be revered in our society. And therefore, that statue acts as an insight into how bad our society was at one point for the individuals we are talking about. It tells them succinctly that at one point in our society, we thought this man was a great man, and that was a very bad thing we did. That was a poor value system that we had. And therefore, what I say is, on the converse, without these statues, there's no public admission of what we once thought. What we say is that people are much less likely to visit museums than they are to look at these statues, to walk past them. What we say is that a great big plaque under the Cecil Rhodes statue saying, this man was vile, this man did very, very bad things, but our society celebrated for him, and we are all guilty of that. We should all be conscious of that history and what we have done. What we say is that for the BAME community, if they live in a country which does not admit the wrongs that is done to it over history, does not face up to that history, we believe that BAME community would feel more disenfranchised in that society and feel like that society is not living up to the wrongs that it has committed, and therefore makes them feel less enfranchised. For those reasons, because people will just think less about that history and not face up to that history, I beg you to oppose the motion.
I'd like to thank Patrick for that fine speech, and now I'd like to call James to summarise the case for his side. Here.
Thank you very much. In summary, what I'd like to say is that in this country, we put up statues of people who we are meant to be. A statue creates a mythology around that person. We don't look into it because it's there, it's part of our town. We just think about it as if it's part of the passing background. We don't critically think about these things because we're not in the mindset when people are passing a statue. They think of where they're going. They don't think of what's around them. They think of the job interview that they have to go to. They think of the family that they're going to meet. They don't think of that statue of Edward Colston. And so what I say is that by taking down these statues, we send a message that racism is no longer tolerated in 21st century Britain, and that we will no longer revere these vile men. Thank you.
I'd like to thank James for that fine summary, and now call on Patrick to summarise the case for his side and indeed the debate as a whole.
To summarise, what people like Edward Colston and Cecil Rhodes, what the acts that they participated in were horrible and should be condemned. But what also should be condemned is the fact that our society as a whole was complicit in those acts and celebrated those acts at particular moments in our history. What we have to live up to as a society is that we did that we were complicit in that. At one point, our value system said that these men were great men. And what we say to you today is, as an opposition to this motion, that it would be a more powerful message to the BAME community to keep these statues, to acknowledge the wrongs that we as a society have committed by employing this kind of value system, along with very obvious acknowledgements of why these men were bad men and why we no longer celebrate these individuals, with plaques on these statues, with public information campaigns, with greater place for Britain's colonial history in primary and secondary education on history. What we say is, in short, is statues matter. Statues force us to face up to the bad history that we have, and therefore we say to you, keep these statues, keep us facing up to that bad history, keep the BAME community enfranchised in our society. Thank you.
I'd like to thank Patrick for that fine summary, and would like to thank both speakers for what I'm sure you agree was a very interesting debate. Thank you very much for listening.